that movie. Did you see the movie?
No, I
The
didn't.
Woman King?
But the Woman King.
Yeah,
So
so
they dramatized that stuff so much, man.
they did, but it was like 2 weeks removed from it when I started. I just sometimes I just get an inclination to look up stuff. So I looked up Saba and the Queen of Sheba, and then I was like, that'll go perfectly with the Queen of, with the
exactly. Yeah,
the Woman King. And then this week, the Kutba was talking about the prophet sending a letter out. And it matched perfectly with that from 2 weeks ago. Just that he sent the letter out to a king and what it said in it. I mean, it just all matched perfectly. Assalamu alaikum. It just all matched perfectly. I mean, it's just Allah's will. And first of all, knowledge. Period. It's just when you put it all together, it's like amazing. So we start off with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. With the name of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. On the 21st of September, I went to Chicago. The community sponsored my trip there, so I wanted to give kind of a recap of what happened there and what things I took away from it. First, we left on Wednesday night, which is actually my wife's birthday. And I forgot my license, so we missed the first flight. Had to go on for like 2 hours later. I changed my clothes. I had my wallet in there. As soon as I got to the airport, I didn't have my license. But luckily, we got there. We just got there 2 hours late. And like I said, it was my wife's birthday too, so we waited a couple hours doing nothing, wasting time. But I was able to go to a couple of different masajids. Which was always a delight. I'd never been to Chicago before ever in my life. And, it's kind of like all the other big cities, Los Angeles, New York, D.C., which I've just recently been to all of those in the last couple of years as well. The only difference I would say is that it was a little bit safer, to be honest with you, in downtown Chicago. Because, you see the news, right? And I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday, about how news and television kind of shapes you and jades your idea of things. So when I heard about Chicago, the first thing I'm thinking about is gangs and all the violence and stuff. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to, put on my mean face out here, right? It was nothing like that. Where I was in downtown, I walked to the masjid for Fajr at 5 in the morning, and I had an earpiece in my ear because I'm using my GPS to find out where I'm going. Because everything is like in this close proximity, and nobody was bothering me. I felt completely safe. Like when I used to be out in my neighborhood when I was young, I had earbuds in, and anything can happen to you with earpiece, and you don't know what's going on. But I felt that safe out there. There was nothing in downtown. It's nothing. No, nothing going on. But the only thing is, it's food and stuff all over the place. You can't be there for longer. I was only there for 3 or 4 days. It's so much stuff going on there that you'll never be able to do it within a certain amount of time, in a short amount of time. We went on that the Chicago 360 on the last day we were there, and we realized it was a carnival like a couple miles away from us. We didn't even know what was going on because there's so much stuff going on at all. It's like so many restaurants. If I lived out there, I'd probably never buy groceries because it's 1,000 restaurants all over the place. But yeah, it was pretty interesting, and it was, like I said, it was the idea of Chicago, what I thought of it was different from what it really was, and I didn't realize how large Chicago was. And there's some areas that obviously there's some violence going on. You got to keep your head kind of on the swivel. But we're in downtown, where most of the people are, it's not anything crazy going on. So just like always, trying to go to Juma. I went to Juma. We had it scheduled because the time was a little bit different. So I was scheduled to go to Juma with Masjid Al Taqwa, but traffic was crazy, by the way, because there's 1 million people out there. So we was walking most of the places we went to. So I missed the first Juma, so I had to go to another one. It was, what is it called? Ifran's Bahar. Apparently, I didn't realize it's a Muslim, named after a Muslim brother,
I didn't know him personally.
Okay.
I know his master.
But Imam Shabazz knew of him or knew of him, and he told me about it. It's a cultural center.
Right.
So this is.
He know everybody.
So I'm driving from where I'm driving. We had a rental car. I'm driving from downtown to where this cultural center is, and things started being a little bit different. I'm like, okay. I started having to put my mean face on. Right? Because it's where the stuff is going down.
Oh, yeah.
So I parked and I'm walking past and I'm seeing these storefronts, and they got. First, I saw a Nation of Islam. They had their own place because I'm going on. I think it was 71st Street. Then I saw a sign that says it's spray painted, and it says "Don't kill our babies while they're playing." I'm like, okay, I'm in a different part of Chicago, right? Then I parked, and all of the stores had small cameras and stuff on them. I'm like, all right, okay. I see where I am now, right? So we went in. I did Juma prayer, which was alhamdulillah, was a great Juma. I can't remember the brother's name that gave the khutbah because I think he was visiting. The imam there is Imam Omar Abdul Kareem. So after the khutbah, I saw Sister Fatia there and another sister that was from here because they went to Chicago for this event. He asked everybody who was traveling, Imam, to raise their hands. So I raised my hand and he made me come up there and say some words. I came to Juma so I could chill, like don't nobody know me here, right? So I just, gave a couple words. I told them I'm from Masjid William Salam in Norfolk, and they gave me a great reception. Alhamdulillah, it was a really good experience. And there was a couple of things that I put in here from the khutbah that the brother gave. And he said some things like, when I listen to khutbahs, I try to take out pieces that I can use or that I remember because they say something that piques my interest. One thing he said was that Gandhi's teacher. Now he didn't say what his name was, or I missed it. He said Gandhi's teacher met with Martin Luther King, or Martin Luther King met him, and he told him that he should teach Al-Islam. And he said because black people need Al-Islam. That's what he said to him. And he said, if you can't teach Islam, then you should teach some version of Christianity that is helpful for black people, but it needs to be catered towards them and towards their understanding. Now, the reason he put this in context was he was saying that in American society, white America had taught African Americans a white version of Christianity, right? In Western society as a whole. So he said the counter to that was what the Nation of Islam did. He said Imam Farad taught black Christianity. He just called it Islam. And I never thought about it in that context because they taught from the Bible. They had the Quran on the shelf, but they were mostly teaching a different understanding of what's in the Bible. So he said it was a black version of Christianity. They just called it Islam. And I was like, okay, I never thought about it that way, but that made a lot of sense. One other thing that he said in the khutbah was he was talking about the children of Israel. And he said when Musa was getting the revelation, they were down there building a golden calf, and he was likening obviously the children of Israel to African Americans in America. And he said they built the golden calf, but he said, where did they get the gold from? I never thought about that either. They got the gold from Egypt, where they were previously. They kept those remnants, and then they used those to make the golden calf. And he was saying sometimes the baggage that you keep from when you were in bondage or when you were mentally in bondage, you bring with you, and then you cause yourself to worship something that you shouldn't worship. And I was like, that's another good thing, another caveat. Hopefully I'll keep to remember. And I'm saying this to you all now, because the more I say it, the more I remember it, and I'll be able to implement that. He also said when Moses came down, I did like comparative religion studies a long time ago, so I can't remember whether I read this before or knew this or he just told me. He was saying when Moses came down, Musa alayhi salam came down, he had the tablets. Now there's a difference in what happens in the Bible and what happens in the Quran. In the Bible, when he comes down, he throws the tablets down and breaks them. Shatters them to pieces. In the Quran, he takes the tablets and puts them down, and then they go fuss out his brother and the children of Israel. Like, he grabbed his brother, like, what's going on here? Man, I left you for 10 minutes, then you come down here, they worship a golden calf. But he said the difference was in that in the Quran, and then he picks them back up in the Quran too. So they're completely together. They're not shattered. He said that difference may seem subtle, but if he had broken them, he would have been the first person who literally broke the laws. Like he just received the laws and then broke them immediately. And that was another caveat that I thought about, because if you ever listen to this man named Gary Miller, he used to do a lot of talking about comparative religion. He was a Christian. He was studying in school, in theological schools, learning about Christianity, but he always had questions about it. And he was asking different church leaders about it, and ultimately they wouldn't give him the answers that were satisfying to him. So he picked up a Quran, and he said that it wasn't a really good translation of the Quran, but it was everything in there that he had been looking for. And he was also a logician, so he studied logic, and he said in logic there's a thing called a mentioning of a word and the meaning of a word. And for example, Allah says in the Quran, if this book was from anyone other than Allah, you would find in it many discrepancies. Now that word for discrepancy is only in the Quran one time. Because if it was in there multiple times, the mentioning of the word would also be incorrect. So Allah says, he says, not only is it no discrepancies in there, but if you try to use it in a logistical way and thought of it like there's multiple times that this word for discrepancy is in there, that's not true either. It's just in there one time. He says the same thing is true when Allah says the believer is not like the disbeliever. He says the number of times that is mentioned, believer is mentioned, is a different number of times than disbeliever is mentioned. And it's usually off by like one. So when Allah says that Jesus is like Adam, they're in there the same amount of times. So in logic, there's a difference between the actual, what it is saying, the meaning, and the mentioning. So the same thing is true here. I mean, it's just that Allah already understood this from until now, and all these instances, and how it makes sense even till today. So the same thing is true about Moses breaking the laws, literally throwing them down. That would be like that he broke the laws, or that he violated the laws by committing a sin or something like that. So, but this imam was saying that he would have been the first person to break the laws by throwing them down. And I thought that was a subtle point, but it's a very important point that Allah says he was just up there talking to Allah, receiving revelation. It doesn't matter what they were doing now. I know he was pissed, but he wouldn't break Allah's tablets, right? Right, quite. And I know he was clearly incensed, right? Because he grabbed his brother up. They say he grabbed him by the chest. Some people say he grabbed him. The translation or the narration say he grabbed him by like his hair, like his beard, like. So if you know the story of Musa was a tough guy. You know what I mean? Like he smacked one man and killed him. You know, like, so there is also narrations that the angel of death tried to come to get him. He tried to fight the angel of death. Like, look, man, I'm coming here doing my job, man. like, you do yours, I do mine. You know, and we also know his frustration with Khidr. So you know, Musa was a tough guy of his day. You know, like he didn't take no mess. But anyway, I thought those were some important points that I wanted to keep for myself and to articulate to you all. And then after Jummah, so I told you I was in this area that was a little bit tough, right? So I knew it wasn't right, so I Googled it, and I was like, okay, I'm in Southside now. I knew I was supposed to be acting tough out here. Then I got caught by a train. I'm like, man, I'm about to be in here for like 20 minutes. Let me get back to downtown. But ultimately I did. There was no problems. Nothing crazy happened at all. The next morning, again, I went to Fajr, and it was it's called Downtown Islamic Center. But they were closed or something. But I tried to get in there. I rang the doorbell a bunch of times. I couldn't even get in. I'm like, man, because I was trying to just go to whenever I go to different cities, I just try to go to different massages so I can just, pray there and get my prayers in. So that Friday was when initially the program started. And that book that I have out here, Servants of Allah, the author of that book was the keynote speaker for Friday afternoon. And she's not Muslim. what I really wanted to talk to her about or find out about was there any more information on how many Muslims were captured during slavery. And she stayed with the same contention that she had, that it was between 10 and 15 or 10 and 20%. And I don't think that number is right. When she was when she wrote the book in her, when she wrote the notes in her book, she said a lot of research hadn't been done on it. So more extensive research needed to be done. And there's a new book out called Beyond Bilal by this brother named Mustafa Briggs. And he said, though they say it's 10 to 20%, those numbers are skewed because Kunta Kinte would be considered a non-Muslim. He would be considered a Christian because he changed his name and he changed his religion and he married a Christian woman. But in all actuality, he was a Muslim. And he was, but the records would show that he was a Christian. And they're counting he was asserting that they're probably counting incorrectly. When you realize the vastness of Muslims in Western Africa, it had to be a larger percentage than that. I've seen as high as 33, 35%. And then I just got this book by a brother, by a professor. It's called Muslims in the Chesapeake. And he said of the 500,000 people that were coming in, out of every 500,000, 300,000 or 250,000 were Muslim. That what his estimate was. And I would just believe that it's more than that, especially considering how African Americans take to Islam. It's because of something that they already have within them. So I was a little bit disappointed that more information hadn't been done on it, because what she did was kind of like read excerpts from the book and kind of explain what the book was. And I hadn't read it previously, so I was just wanting to find some new information. She's also written a book called Life of Exiles. So people, the Maroons who escaped slavery, and then she has I have another book of hers I haven't read yet on fighting slavery. So those people who were instrumental in the revolts, those are things I'm interested in. I think I know enough about slavery and what happened there. I want to know about those people who revolted, and I know that many of those people were Muslims, or they're spearheaded by Muslims. So that's something that I was interested in. She mentioned the Muslims that came here, because that was kind of her subject, is servants of Allah. So she was talking about the Muslims that came here. But she was not privy to, or maybe enough research hadn't been done yet, but you know that Mansa Musa's brother probably, most likely, traveled to the Americas. So Muslims was here before Columbus was here before they navigated. You know, Ivan Sertima has this book called Before Columbus. They were here before Columbus. And his name is Mansa Abu Bakr. He was the king, but he abdicated his throne and gave it to Mansa Musa because he wanted to do more traveling. So there was a ship that came here, and a ship wrecked. So he wanted to bring another group of people, and him and a bunch of other Muslims came to the Americas. They haven't found the ship, but they found remnants from Africa in America and in South America and Northern America that the Native Americans traded with them. Some items that can only come from Africa are found there, and that's what Ivan Van Sertima had found years ago, and research is being done to that effect today. So we don't have to say that Muslims just came here on slave ships. They came here on ships that they designed to come here long before Europe even had ships. So that's one point. That's one caveat that I wish was articulated in this, but it wasn't. So the event, after the event, we were supposed to have a dinner, but Windy City of Chicago, they blew the wind blew the tent apart or something like that. Nobody was able to eat. They had to eat inside, and me and my wife went somewhere else. So the next day was a day full of speakers, different speakers that came out. So this was at the what is it called? The Islamic what is it called? Let's make sure I get the name right. College of Islam in Chicago. Oh, American Islamic College is what it's called. This is still, I don't think it's downtown Chicago, but it's a pretty affluent neighborhood. You can just tell, like, from the houses there, It's a pretty affluent neighborhood where it is in, and the president's name is Timothy Giannotti. He gave some pretty encouraging words and appreciation for Imam W.D. Muhammad, his teaching, and for the mass reversion, obviously, to Al-Islam. And there was a teacher there who also says that she teaches her students about Imam W.D. Muhammad and about just appreciation for what he had done, what he was able to accomplish. And she makes sure that her students are aware of this, that they're, African American Muslims, and that there was a large reversion. And she kind of she made sure that as a part of the curriculum that they understand how we became Muslims, and then, that it was something more than what they may see on television, or more than what's on Malcolm X movie or something to that effect. It was organized by a sister, I think her name is Fitra Muhammad, and her daughter Naima Muhammad was kind of a keynote speaker there. One of the, you okay, brother? Yeah. Okay. One of the presentations they had up, it said this. It said, French Connection, 1672. And one of the quotes was given that says, "This people cannot see any longer how we can feed the slaves bacon. It is an aversion to them, and they will only eat it under force." This is in 1672. One of the French slavers said, if we can't force these Africans to eat pork. Now, those people obviously are most likely were Muslims that were they had this aversion to pork. They had to be forced to eat it, and that's 400 years ago. Another brother, so what they did was have different topics that they wanted to discuss. It was more of an appreciation for Imam W.D. Muhammad and his association, and more of a showing that we're all one, we're all together, and they want to show that they had some, the admiration they had for him as well. One brother was a Dr. Nasir Ahmed. He said, the Kaaba was made pure like our mind, then idols were put in it. So the Prophet Ibrahim and Ismail built the Kaaba, and then idols were put in it. He says, your mind was pure, then idols were put in it. Then the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam removed idols from the Kaaba. In the same way, Imam W.D. Muhammad helps to remove the idols of Jesus and Farad Muhammad from the African American mind, who had come from the Nation of Islam and come from Christianity to the belief in the one true God and true Tawheed. So in this time, there was a brother or Imam Fahid Shuaib. And he was supposed to do like opening remarks, and his opening remarks lasted for an hour. And alhamdulillah, he covered like so much that the sister, if you see the Muslim Journal out here, she's the editor of the Muslim Journal. She had to edit her speech because he talked about everything that she was supposed to talk about. So she was going to talk about the transition from the Nation of Islam to Al-Islam and the history of it. And he talked about all of that and more into the future. You can tell he's like really knowledgeable person. So he was like, I'm gonna get all of this done right. He was probably the first significant speaker. He covered everything within an hour. But she said she could tell her speech a little bit to kind of cater to what he had already said. One imam that is a friend of this community. All of them are friends of this community, but one imam that I met previously is Imam Donnell Kareem. I met him the day before as well. The other thing is I was a little bit disappointed because I was unable to kind of rub shoulders with some imams and leaders from the community and from all over the country like I thought it was going to be. So what happened, it was an auditorium, and the speakers would come out maybe an hour or so before their time to speak, and they were in the front of the auditorium, and I'm over here in the middle. So I never really got to talk to as many people as I anticipated, but I did listen to everybody speak. But I was able to meet Imam Donnell Kareem because I had met him previously. When Imam Vernon Farida returned to Allah, I met him and spoke to him a couple times. One quote that I had from him, it says, "We never converted to Al-Islam. We reverted to what we had lost and what was taken from us." Now, I try to articulate this point to African Americans all the time. They know kind of deep down that this religion of Christianity was forced on us. But it's in the back of their minds, like that. But they don't realize that without the force of a whip and starvation and kidnapping, they would not be Christian, right? Colonization, even if they were in Africa, the colonization made them Christian. They never chose this religion. They never said, oh, this makes sense. I want to be a Christian. As a whole, they forced the whole religion on us. Everybody who's from Africa, that religion was forced on your foreparents, and then it was given to you and given to that person and given to that person. And every ship that came here, none of those people that came on that ship was Christian. So it really was whatever you believed in was stripped from you, and then something else was given to you. You never chose that. Your people never chose it. And I mean, because Christianity is the largest religion in the world in terms of those people who profess to be Christians, it doesn't seem like that bad of an issue. But when you put it in the context that it was literally forced on you, you wouldn't believe that a man died for your sins except for somebody whipping you and making you believe it. Or taking over your whole continent and making you believe it. Like when they were presented with Al-Islam, they said, this makes sense. God is one. He brought a messenger to me and to everybody else. That makes sense. But the idea that God made a human being and then cursed them for committing one sin, not cursing him, but cursed everybody, and then he had to come down and die for it, must have been whipped in us for us to believe it. That's the real truth, right? So whatever you believed in, whether it was an African spiritualist religion or in Al-Islam, that was taken from you. So that was one point that I felt that he articulated, and it should have been reiterated. Another Dr. Edward Curtis, he said, Islam has been synonymous with anti-colonialism and resistance since the 1800s. What he was talking about was when there was a declaration made to stop capturing Muslims because they kept resisting and they kept inviting other people to resist. So the idea of Al-Islam and anti-colonialism or fighting oppression has always been something that is a part of history. And that's why African Americans, when they heard the Nation of Islam, they was like, this is something that can resonate with me. They are anti-establishment. They don't believe this establishment is right. They believe that they taught us incorrectly, and this system is incorrect. We should not be living in this system in harmony or in submission. So even today, people that want to be anti-establishment, they are attracted to Al-Islam. So it's always been something that is anti-colonial or resistance. And as the brother here says, it's a revolutionary religion. As I said, when I said in the football on Friday, Abu Dhabi, he said, the first thing he said when he accepted Al-Islam is, I'm going to go tell everybody. And all he said was, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But that was revolutionary. He was telling all, whatever y'all believe, that's not true, this is true. And it caused them to jump on him and want to fight him. So that was one thing that I thought was important. Imam Zayed Shakir couldn't make it. I think he said he had some issues, some sickness in his family. So he recorded a video for us to see and just gave his appreciation for Imam W.D. Muhammad and for his association and the knowledge that he had and the knowledge that he gave to the African American and to everyone. You know, the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad and just his transition to Orthodox or to Al-Islam is something that is very important. Then the same time they had a panel for Imam Abdel Kareem, Imam Sharaj Wahaj was in there as well. And he's always world renowned for speaking. His was on his personal journey as an imam under the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And what he said was, every time he prays and every time everybody prays, the blessings that Imam W.D. Muhammad receives for that. Because he said, listen, we weren't praying like this before. He said, we was praying like this. And he said, we were making salat. So every time an African American from this association is making salat, and And he's, not necessarily in this association, but everybody he's taught, because from what he taught from what he learned from Imam W.D. Muhammad, that's how many blessings he's receiving over and over and over again from teaching them how to pray properly and how to worship properly and to understand Allah properly. Because it was also mentioned, Imam Shuaib, when he did his hour-long talk, he was talking about the transition from the Nation of Islam to Orthodox Islam, talking about in 1975 when he was unanimously chosen, when he went from changing people from ministers to imams. They started focusing on the Quran, less on the Bible, and saying Farah Muhammad is not Allah in personage. All of those things was a huge transition, and it took time. It's like moving a ship, basically turning the ship around and putting it back on course. They also talked about classes in schools. They had Khalid Al-Amin and Dr. Lynn Muhammad talking about just education in general. And this is what she said, or this is what was said about him in the notes. Imam Muhammad said it is genetic. Al-Islam lay dormant for hundreds of years to now burst forth as a new growth, creating new people, the Muslim African American. He understood human development from studying the Quran, the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The old world established Muslim civilizations in Africa and the Middle East. He came to realize that African blacks, descendants of enslaved people who developed in America nearly 9,000 miles away from their homeland in Africa, were a new social group, a new people, essentially with a new mind and new sensitivities, which were developed by their common experience of enslavement. So the experience that we have is something that is unique to us as African Americans. As such, there's always parallels when you go to different masajids and you hear the khutbahs. There are always different parallels that are drawn between Yusuf and the children and African Americans and their experience, because he was enslaved and then he was brought out of slavery because of the experience that he had, and he was someone who led people into Al-Islam. The same thing is true with Luqman, and there's parallels with Jonah, and all the different stories. You can draw parallels of the experience that African Americans have, and that all comes from the ideas of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And how those were used to be inspiration, how we should still use them as inspiration today to say, oh, Bilal, obviously Bilal, he is a caller to Al-Islam, and that's what we are supposed to be. That's what we're called Bilalians at one point, because we are uniquely positioned to understand the American experience, to understand Al-Islam, and how we can make Al-Islam thrive in this society that we are in currently. One of the questions that was asked was about school systems. And Dr. Lynn Muhammad was saying that there's a system in place already. I have to research and find out what she was talking about. But she said there's a template that can be used anywhere on how to start a school up. So you don't need necessarily a school building, a huge facility in order to do so. Right across the street here, we have, I don't know if you all know this, but across the street there, they have a school for African Americans. It teaches African stuff. It's centered around African studies, but they have a curriculum and everything. So if it can be done, it clearly can be done. I know there's jokes about one popular Pan-African who's supposed to be building a school for the last 10 years, and there's one right across the street over here, right? It can be done. If you want to do it on a large scale and want a huge $1 million building, it might take some years. But if you start small, then obviously you can build from there. And there's also, I was telling you about that she was talking about the curriculum already. There's a Claire Muhammad School Network that we have here. I'm gonna leave this out. It kind of shows the school systems that are available in different networks. So in Arkansas, in North Carolina, Virginia, obviously they have a school. I visited a school in Atlanta, in New York. They have different school systems, and then they have different degrees or different, I guess some of them have whole school systems, some of them just have curriculums where they learn online, and it kind of, I guess you can call them and or email them, and they can give you some information on starting a curriculum yourself. Then they had my favorite panel was Sister Anissa and Imam Wazir Ali and the assistant imam from Atlanta. So I mean, first of all, I already know Sister Anissa to some degree. You know, you was here when did you meet her when she was here? She was here for
I didn't know meet her, but I remember she was here.
Right, 2 marriage conferences, and she is just great, man. I mean, when me and my wife met her, it was like she is related to us, man. She's very knowledgeable, and what her subject on was Imam W.D. Muhammad's his insight into sending younger people out to learn al-Islam and then coming back and having that knowledge. Because she was one of the people that he sent to Syria to learn Arabic and then come back and to teach. And that's why she's so fluent in it. We were just in here listening to her recitation. It's a beautiful recitation. And Imam from Atlanta, Imam Suleiman, was another one that went to Syria under Imam W.D. Muhammad. So her topic was creating the educational opportunities for women to understand and translate the Quran in its revealed language. And she does perfectly with that. And they were really talking about his insight into having people go overseas, learning this language and come back, learning the Quran and learning the tajweed and learning all the aspects of the Quran. Interestingly enough, I know a brother who was learned overseas, and he kind of got the culture from overseas, and he was taught that the culture is a part of al-Islam as well. So that he tried to implement that here, and it took him a long time, but finally he realized that it wasn't probably the best course of action, because culture is different from the deen. You know, we have different culture in what we have here. The culture, as long as your culture doesn't coincide or contradict al-Islam, you keep your culture, and then you al-Islam enhances your culture and teaches you how to properly worship Allah. Imam Wazir Ali was another. I'm gonna try to find his khutbahs or whatever he gives. He was very. It was like electric, man. I love listening to him speak. He said this. He said, just because there's something ain't going on in your masjid, don't think it ain't going on in other masjids. He said in Houston they got a school. I mean, they got so many Muslims there, they had to split off into 3 different masajids. And they got school systems, they got food, they got businesses, they got everything going on there. You know, and it really was inspiring. You know, when I went to Atlanta, I met some Muslims there, and I followed a couple of Muslims. One of them was in Detroit, man. I told the brother, I said, man, I'm about to move to Detroit, man. Y'all got stuff going on every week, man. It seems like every day something is going on there. So, and the last one was the Imam from Atlanta, Imam Rashad. He was another one. Their whole panel was just great to me. Because they were about my age group too, you know what I mean? So it was really exciting. He was talking about a unique tafsir of Imam W.D. Muhammad. And that's what I really wanted. Also I thought would have been a little bit better if they talked more about the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Not just the language, but the tafsir, his understanding of things. You see, because one instance they were talking about bringing youth and bringing the youth in, right? Because most of us was older people in there, you know, my age and older. And I think instead of talking about Imam W.D. Muhammad, talk more about what he did and what he taught. Like we just had this Imam Ghazali class, right? The first week was about introduction about him and why he wrote the book and the environment around it. Everything after that is his teachings. So I think that's what this whole community should focus on, period. Is like, for example, maybe last month I did a khutbah on the verse of light, the verse of Noah, right? That whole thing was from Imam W.D. Muhammad, right? But I may have mentioned his name one time, but you know, the once people realize what you can get from it, that's the more important thing. You know what I mean? Because the person who told you they're going to get their barakah. They're going to get their blessings from Allah. But more important than that, and that if you were more interested in getting the youth, because the funny thing is, after that khutbah, a bunch of brothers asked me, well, how'd you get that insight? How'd you get that knowledge? Where you get that from, right? They said, that's people who've been to school and couldn't explain those ayahs the way you did. And I'm like, you know where I got it from? I just got it from class, actually, right? And the explanation for it, because I read it, it's so amazing how you read something a bunch of times and then somebody gives you some insight into something that you've been reading, and then you realize, okay, this is what it means. Because when I read the Quran, I read the English translation, it says a niche. Niche means nothing to me growing up. I didn't realize, like when it says a niche, like I understand what a niche is now, but if I wasn't in this community or if I wasn't in the masjid, I was just home reading it, but I would just read right over it. You know what I mean? Because that niche means nothing to me. And some of the words that are used, period, just the way Yusuf Ali writes the language, the way he learned it, some of the words like pass right through me because they don't resonate with me, So that's one thing I think we should do more of. I'm gonna give you. I was telling my son this. Another example is Al-Islam, right? So I say Al-Islam all the time, right? And I was at ICNA conference, I don't know, a couple months ago, and they just say Islam. Everybody says Islam, right? And he's in this association, Imam W. Muhammad makes a point to say Al-Islam. And then I have some, I'm in the class, so sometimes he didn't say Islam, but he made it a point at some point to start saying Al-Islam. And the reason is, or the reason I think it's important, has to do with me and comparative religion, right? So I argue with people all the time about this Al-Islam is true, right? So when I say people 100 years ago practiced Al-Islam, people 1,000 years ago, people 10,000 years ago, I said since the beginning of time, right? Since planets were in, as soon as Allah created the first thing, Al-Islam came into existence because it submitted to his will. So when you tell a Christian that, they were like, listen, I submit to the will of God, right? And in the Quran, there is a differentiation between what you think is Al-Islam and what Allah thinks it is. He calls it the submission to the will of God. Al-Islam, not just Islam, not just what you think Islam is or what he thinks it is or what your cousin thought it was. This is Al-Islam in the same way he says Ar-Rahman, or like the merciful, not just merciful. So this is not just Islam, this is Al-Islam. And when you read the hadith of Jibril, the same thing is true when the Prophet is articulating Al-Islam to Jibril and explaining to him what it is. He says Al-Islam, he says Al-Iman is not just Iman. When we say Iman, it's cool because we understand it. When we go out there and say, no, faith. No, faith, I got faith. No. This is different faith. The faith means these things. If you don't believe these things, you don't have Al-Iman. The same thing is Al-Ihsan, the excellence. It's not just excellence. Everybody think they're excellent. You know what I mean? Like, so if you use those, and they can be taken anywhere. It's just the truth. When you read the Arabic, it says Al-Islam, Al-Iman. So when you use the language that he uses and the understanding, that's the thing that should be articulated more than just saying, I like them. Because there's some people who get up and say, yeah, I went to school with them and we played in the sandbox. Like, yes, that was nice, but what did you get from them? You know what I mean? That's something that you can pass on. Because that's another thing I think that we are missing is giving something that's concrete that you can pass on to your kids and pass on to someone else. That knowledge will last on forever and ever and ever and ever. As long as it's beneficial, it'll always last. And then Imam Yahya Abdullah, that was another one I wanted to meet because I listened to his khutbahs all the time. I was so mad and I could not meet him, right? I saw him and he gave his talk and he was talking about words make mind and mind makes man means mind, and how your words, the positive words you say reinforce you and build you. That's why we should say words of encouragement, words that are righteous. And the 4 birds that Imam W. Imam teaches about education, governance, business, and culture. He was talking about all those things, but I never really got to talk to him and tell him, brother, I listened to your khutbah. After my khutbah, I go home and listen to yours and see what you had to say. It's a couple of people I listen to just because I like what they have to say and I like the way they say it. I think that's all the notes that I had. I just want to make sure because the community sponsored me going there, so I wanted to make sure I gave them some insight into what was said there and what happened there, and what I took from it. Muhammad Ali's daughter was there. I wanted to take a picture with her so bad, but I'm like, man, I'm gonna go up there like a groupie, man. So I ain't say nothing. She was like 2 seats away from me, and nobody was around. I know I probably could have got a picture from her. I was like, then my wife was there. She's like, why they trying to take a picture of her for? I'm like, you know what? I ain't gonna do it. I ain't worried about it, right? You ever seen on Netflix, they had this thing, Central Park 5. You know about Central Park 5? The brother was there as well, Yusuf Salam. He wasn't presenting. He was just there in the audience. And I got his book called Punch in the Air. Then he has another one that I don't have this other one. It's called something about like not having resentment for the things that happened to him. But I love listening to him speak anyway. So he got up and talked a little bit. But he was like he was engaging the people on the stage, but he didn't have his own segment to speak. But he was another person I was thinking about getting a picture with, and I was like, man, I don't know who asked this dude. I've seen him before in Atlanta masjid, because, you know, it's a huge masjid, and the people there all the time. I saw, what's his name there? The brother, they used to be we used to be in the NBA, and they banned from the NBA. Mahmoud Abdul Rahman was, what is his name? Abdul Aruf was there. He used to be Christian Jackson before he changed his name. But I used to see it, so I saw him there a couple of times as well. The last thing I wanted to say, at least on this subject, is it says, this is a quote from Imam W.D. Muhammad. It says, I see myself tomorrow living in you. I won't be dead. I will be living in you. So please give me a nice future. Yes, give me the future you know I want after I die on the earth. I won't be living anywhere except in you. So please give your Imam W.D. Muhammad a nice future. You won't be able to walk with me, but he will be with you, living in your time with you. So please remember that I am with you. Mm. So, and these words are in the program that he had that they gave to us. But I thought it was an interesting quote that he was saying, basically, not just him personally, but his knowledge and what he taught can always live on. And whenever I listen to Imam Rashid talking about Imam Ghazali, I think about that's how it should be, that the knowledge that he's given and the influence and the impact that he had is able to live on by embodying what he learned and then teaching it to other people, and they're learning it and teaching it to someone else. And then those barakas just continue on. When I was, I don't know, I guess in my 20s, this rapper is a Muslim guy. His name is Freeway. And at this time, I was really listening to rap music and stuff. And he said something. He's from Philly, so he said, "When I die, my sins are gonna be piling up from all this crap I'm saying on these rap songs." Right? And he said, what I need to do is undo that by saying some righteous stuff so I can undo these bad things, because 20 years from now, somebody can listen to this CD and I'm getting punished for it, right? And when I thought about that, I realized legacy and how important legacy is, and how important leaving something that is important, that is beneficial to people is. So when you teach your kids, when you teach other people, you will receive those barakas because they'll continue on and on. And then when you're long gone, you're still getting blessings for things that you've done. So anything bad that you've done, repent for, and everything good you do, you leave a legacy for people to follow and for your own blessings to be received. Any questions? I think I covered everything that I wanted to. Yeah.
That quote that you just gave from Imam Muhammad, that's in his book, Follow the Leader.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it is.
That's in that new book, Follow the Leader. And the whole version is in there. And I think from what I got, the idea is not to look for a person, but look for that idea, to follow that idea that he brought to us.
Yes.
We don't really need a person so much. You know, like Prophet Muhammad is not here physically, we have that idea of him. That's what I think Imam Muhammad is trying to convey to us as well.
You know, there was a subject we were talking about this morning. Me and Brother Latif was here this morning, and I was talking about, you know, the Prophet's birthday. And as soon as we got up from Fajr prayer, I said, we just celebrated the Prophet's birthday. We just celebrated the Prophet at his birthday, but celebrated him and gave him praise and thanks in our salat. Every time we pray, we are. Right? We asking Allah to bless him and to send their peace on him over and over again. You know, nobody on earth has received as many blessings as he is getting from us routinely, 5 times a day, from almost 2 billion Muslims. You know, so that's our praise and celebration of him. You know, through his knowledge, he taught us how to pray. And just imagine that. Now that's a real blessing. Just imagine how many blessings you get for 2 billion people. And then there's 2 billion people that's living now. From when he was here up until now. It's just it's
and that's pretty much 5 times a day now.
Right.
5 times a day.
It's mind-boggling. You know, I was talking to Sister Jeanette about a book that she wrote, and she said that she has to revise it. And I have to do the same thing with my books, especially considering I've learned a lot more in terms of Arabic. But I try to tell people all the time, if they're able to write down your memoirs, write down your story, even if it's not for public consumption, if it's for your family, it's for your grandkids. I didn't know my grandfather, right? I had 2 of them. I didn't know one of them. I don't know what his name is, and the other one didn't have a real relationship with. You know, and he was 90-something years old. Just imagine the knowledge that he had, no matter what he did. You know, and he had a pretty significant job, but the wisdom that he had was gone with him. I know he had some lessons to teach, but I don't know what they are. My kids don't know. It was actually one instance when I was living down the other side of this street here. He was across the street and he didn't know who I was. Right? I don't know. I'm getting into my own hurt now.
But that's typical of us because we don't do family reunions, you know.
Right.
In order to know our family. So that's not something unusual.
But if we have a pre-existing condition or something like that, like my father was born with a heart defect, so at some point he knew he wasn't going to be around here. But if you have the ability to write down your life or write down the lessons you want to teach your kids, and it may not be your kids, it may like somebody may dig it up from 100 years ago. 100 years later, and get some information from it, or get some knowledge from it, or some inspiration from it, and you'll be getting blessings from that. But especially for your family, so they can know, like, this is what my grandfather was about. This is what my father's father was about. This is what he wanted to teach us, because it'll get lost, you know, especially African Americans, because it's 300 years of legacy that was lost, right? 300 years, and we weren't able to read and write on purpose. So that, because it's 2 things that I can think of right offhand that we need to rekindle immediately is our health. Is our wealth and our knowledge, because those things are cumulative. If we were able to build something 300 years ago, just imagine you know how to go. The family that made Walmart or whomever, we could have been one of those families, or we could have been beneficiaries of one of those families. But we weren't able to own anything for those times. The same thing is true with knowledge. Everything you know, I should be like, you know, everybody should. What were we just talking about? A library is burned down from a knowledgeable person. We had 300 years worth of people that they weren't able to write down what they thought, and they weren't able to think freely. So that's something we definitely need to partake in if we can, to try to capture that knowledge and then give it to the next generation. I know they're hard-headed, you know, but if you have a certain, somebody's going to read it at some point. You know, somebody's going to be interested in it.
And watch out for the thieves too, because when you said that, it reminded me of the things that some of our earlier parents did, and they didn't get credit, like the stoplight.
Right.
and the gas mask,
Mhm.
right? And the shoelacing machine, and all the 300 patents from George Washington Carver,
Mhm.
and on and on and on. And they ain't get credit for it. Even Tuskegee couldn't get his patents. Pfizer got his patents. So we got to watch out for thieves as well.
And I just think of it in terms of this dean. If you know how Ibrahim prayed for his descendants to be Muslim, right? If at some point they fell off, so at some point they stopped following the way, right? But they can return when they look in this book and say, "Oh, that's what he wanted for me." And it could be the same thing with us and our family. Maybe our kids don't want to do right, but maybe our great grandkids do. You know, and they find out my granddad said we should be Muslim. Maybe I need to look into this more. You know, because once you do that, you realize that was the path and that was the course that they were choosing for you. The same thing is true with any of the people that were enslaved. Just imagine if we knew for certain that they were Muslim, and how many people out here would be more inclined to understand Islam if they knew for sure their grandparent or their great grandparents was Muslim. So I mean, I tried to find my ancestry because I'm pretty sure that my ancestors were Muslims. Just because of the affinity that I have for it, my father had for it, and his grandmother, I think I told you all, when she saw pictures of Muslims praying, she said that's how we used to pray. So I know that we came from Muslim people. I just don't know which one, right? So I mean, that's the other reason why I wanted to go here, because I wanted to find out how much more research had been done, because I know it's a larger degree than what they're saying. I know it's a larger degree than what they're saying. We are a testament to it. And every time you talk to an African American about it, and you try to instill into them that this life that you're living is a life that was imposed on you. This belief system that you had, you wouldn't be believing these things about God if it wasn't for somebody who made you believe them. So that's why you should be questioning it. You know, question everything. Then find the answer. Because when you find the answer, when you question everything, you study everything, you're going to come to Al-Islam. And what is better? Right? I swear, I believe personally that if somebody took a genuine study of everything, that's what they're going to come to. And then it's up to you to decide now whether you want to accept it or not. But when you put everything on, all the cards on the table, because I also considered doing this, I don't know maybe if I still should do it, is having conferences with like people from different faiths and just let them discuss what their religion is by somebody who genuinely practices it. Because when you do, you're going to see something, right? Because when it comes out what they believe, and this is an expert in the situation, and you don't even have to be an expert. All you got to do is be a practicer of Al-Islam and say what you do every day, and you'll see the difference. It is night and day from every other belief, every other system. All right, Joe.
So before you know, I think we may also want to have these, maybe the younger people who are coming up in our community, understand that some of us who came before them were like strong social advocates, activists. I'm sorry, strong social activists. You know, we had some of us demonstrated, some of us rallied, maybe even some of us picketed, and we did it to defend the character of Isa ibn Maryam.
Right.
You know, with that Craig committee, we went into the streets and demonstrated. We stopped at various institutions and said, look, y'all just defaming this man's character. You know, you got to stop that. We did what the Muslims would do when they characterize Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for years, and I mean, all throughout the country, we did that. Muslims now, calling ourselves Muslims, and we standing up for Isa ibn Maryam, whereas they're not even standing up for him. So we need to let our people our children coming up, know that a lot of us were like, I guess you could call it radical if you want, in terms of defending the character of Prophet Isa.
But to me, becoming a Muslim, period, is a courageous act. And it's an act of resistance. It's an act of defiance. So my dad was a Muslim. Nobody in his family was Muslim. And they was all pissed at him that he was. Right? All of them, except for the only person who wasn't was his grandmother. And that was because she knew about a little bit about Islam when she grew up. But everybody else was pissed at him. So it takes that type of person who doesn't care what everybody think about him. And we don't have a lot of those people in society today. You gotta be brave. You gotta have some resilience and some, I don't care what everybody think, they all wrong, I'm right? You have to have that, and not a lot of people have that today, and unfortunately. So maybe if we can kindle that in them, it's like, you gotta stand for something. You have to want to change things, or want a better situation for yourself, and not just for yourself, for others, because now this society that we live in is an individualistic society. It's everybody for themselves. I'm going to get as much education as I can so I can get as much money as I can. And then I'll be home free. All they worry about is themselves. They don't care what is happening to the collective. So if we could somehow inspire them to want to do better and be better and not just be in the in crowd, because it takes, like I said, it takes some resilience to do that. And it's easier to just do what everybody else is doing. And I'm saying this as somebody who was in that situation. I was hiding from being a Muslim because it's easier to not be fussing with people. And it's easier not to explain I'm not a terrorist. But then I was like, hold on. Why am I scared? Why am I ashamed? They need to be ashamed. They believe they're doing all kinds of foolishness. All I'm doing is praying to God. What's wrong with that?
It's like I was on the radio program, we were talking about how the prophet was bribed, blocked, boycotted, or simply because he stood up and said that there's only one God. And 40 years before that, they knew him as El Amin,
right?
As Sadiq. And now when you say that there's one God, we don't like it anymore. It's something
right.
like that, right?
Right.
So I may have missed it. What was the update from Muslim Culture Con?
Say again?
Muslim Culture Con, I know they had a president, a young group called Muslim Culture Con. They had a group there.
I didn't see them.
Oh, okay. I thought they had gave some presentations and things as well. Because I know they're recruiting strong. They are mostly out of Atlanta.
Because one of the issues that came up was trying to engage the youth. I mean, this is the thing with youth nowadays, because they have so much at their disposal in their hands. Like, we already was talking about this before. We're talking about them being involved in the community. Is they don't go outside. You know what I mean? So that's my mama could not she had to find me. You see my mama here, right? Next week when we ask her how many times she had to go find me. I never was one to be. I don't know what they're doing in the house, in the room. I was never in my house.
I don't know if it's
I would sneak out. She would only I love my mama. She would never embarrass me, but the only thing she would do is like ride past and beat the horn, let me know that I'm about to be on punishment for the rest of the month or something. But she wouldn't come out there on me. But I was never in the house. So the first step is getting them out into communicating, because we live in an age of fake communication, fake socializing. I mentioned this previously. I've in about 3 khutbahs so far, and I've been a man for like a year. I've talked about depression.
Okay.
It's because it's such a huge issue, and it's because of social media. First, you don't have depression comes from lack of interaction with people, right? And understanding how to deal with people, and having your own self-esteem and your own self-regard. And because they see social media and they see people on television or on social media on pages doing well, they think, oh, I'm not doing as good as I should be. And like I said, I only post pictures of me and my wife when we're having fun. I don't know, we'll never have a picture when she mad at me, right? So you're not gonna see that. You're only gonna see the happy times. That's what everybody does. Nobody posts a picture on their saddest day. So our children already, this social media thing is already a detriment to them. And everything that comes with it, because there's so much misinformation and disinformation and complete flat out lies. And then after that, it's distractions. Okay. Tons and tons and tons of it. By the time you realize that you need to be doing something important with your life, you already went down a wrong path.
And I may have missed it. The way forward, the new mind for new people. Can you kind of again?
So this is the thing with it. So it says, this is the bottom of it. It says a historical perspective of the ministry of Imam W.D. Muhammad. Because they really didn't talk a lot about a new way forward. They talk about some land that is being, that is already purchased, that we're going to have some communities built upon. And they talked about some, like Houston and Atlanta and in northern, not northern Virginia, but I think in New York and New Jersey, they're talking about schools and things that are there, but it wasn't really like a roadmap into what we're moving forward. It was more of a history and an appreciation for Imam W.D. Muhammad, more so than what is the next steps forward.
I thought when they said a new mind, you know, Imam Muhammad did this thing on African American Genesis. Did you get one of these?
Yeah, I read it a long time ago.
Right. He did this I think was like the second study he did on why we are new people.
I mentioned that a little bit. So, and the reason and where that came from, you know, is from because of our experiences as enslaved people, that we are new people, and we are. I mean, and we talk about this in the Islamic leadership course as well, is because we are uniquely positioned to understand the American experience. And since America is such a huge superpower and probably the largest power in the history of the world, if we could get the steers of this ship, we could steer it straight, right? And that's always been my aspiration. But then I started getting gray in my beard and gray in my head, and I'm like, man, I ain't gonna see this while I'm alive. So, right?
Maybe
I'm
not
serious.
the whole thing. Maybe not the whole thing.
My whole life, this is what's been happening to me my whole life. So I've been arguing with people and stuff about this stuff, and then people are like, I know you hate America. I'm like, I promise you, this is what people say. And they say, well, if you hate America so much, why don't you leave? I said, no, I want to change this. I want to make things better. I don't want to leave.
Absolutely.
But now.
and you know, to that same point, between African Americans and Caucasians, we're the only ones that can stand up in America and speak about correctly.
Right, that's for sure.
Since 9/11, most immigrants have been zipper mouth. They know they can get extradited, or they feel that they can be extradited for condemning America. They stood up and do what whites and blacks do in terms of speaking out against America. So that's an advantage for us.
For sure.
You know, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but you see some of these Muslims who come here, they're not going to stand up and point the finger at America like we will, or like these Caucasians will. So we have a kind of slight edge.
We have a unique position. That's for sure. We do. One thing is they're afraid of being sent back, but the other thing is, I think, is a comfortability level. They have a lot of money. They have huge positions, right? I mean, once you are sitting comfortable, who wants to be a revolutionary once you got $1 million? You know what I mean?
But look, now,
that sounds like y'all problem. I'm doing good.
That does sound like it, but then if we go back and study the prophets, right? We had some very wealthy prophets.
Right.
They didn't do that. They didn't give into wealth.
They were people. I mean, they were prophets. These regular people here.
But these prophets are typical of us. They are
for sure.
Same character, right? Like Suleiman. Very wealthy. Had things at his disposal. You think he gave into that and just...
Listen, what I mean by that is Allah chose him because he was a noble, righteous person. Right? All these people got millions of dollars. I'm gonna say this. If I was a multi-millionaire, I wouldn't be a multi-millionaire alone. If I had $1 billion, somehow I'd come up with an invention to have $1 billion. I would not have it longer than a day. Because I can't live my life with people. I know people are starving. I can't have $1 billion in my bank account. So these people do have the money, right? And they're letting the stuff still happen. So that says something kind of about them and their character.
So, but with you, Allah will bless you like you blessed Mansa Musa. He, on his way to pilgrimage, what did he do? Give it away.
He gave it, and he also inherited a kingdom. These people are like regular. If it's somebody that created the internet, got $100 billion. I would be so scared that I'm gonna die the next day, and I gotta account for my $100 billion when people are starving. I ride past people all the time digging in the trash.
and the city don't understand. They're posting these signs now, don't encourage panhandling. Well, obviously it's not enough what you guys are doing.
Right.
And my little few dollars is not gonna, I don't think it's gonna break the person. If he needs it, it's only a few dollars.
Right. When I was in Chicago, I'm walking down past, I'm looking in the alleys, you know, people in there, you know, it's, like I said, there's restaurants everywhere. So they're just digging in the trash.
And the kind of poverty that we saw around the Cabo, that was mind-boggling.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other subject. So poverty here is nothing like in other countries. You see, like it's real poverty. They live in 10 houses and stuff. Like, man, like I can't imagine having a surplus of money and not helping everybody I could with it.
All that oil revenue coming in, you can't do something about the housing around the Cabo.
How much money do you need? One person.
Right. So yeah, I mean, so I think some of it has to do with comfortability. When I went to the ICNA conference, I think I told you I was in line with a young brother. He was probably 19 years old. He had told me he'd been on Hajj like 4 times. He'd have been all over the world. He was with his dad. His dad's rich. Clearly, you know how much Hajj costs? In order to go there 5 times. Right? I'm like, you know, but those, they can help fund somebody who's really trying to make some changes.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Instead of taking their son to Hajj 10 times, like, okay, all right, brother, you pious. All right, now we can do something. That's one of the benefits, I think, maybe with the Saudis taking control of it. I don't condone the idea of them having lotteries and all of this and then condemning people or not allowing people of a certain age to go there. But if somebody's been there like 4 times, then somebody else will want to go. You know, like just because you can afford it, because it's a limited amount of space. It has to be.
Well, you know, Hajj Murshideen, the brothers in Atlanta, 3 or 4 of them take people there, so they have to go every year.
Yeah. So now that's different. If you are a tour guide, it's something different. This brother he's younger than my son, and he's been to Hajj
4 times.
4 times. You hear me? And not only Hajj, he was telling me all the other places he'd been. And you know, the funny thing is, he wasn't bragging. We were just in conversation. Right. I told him I'd been to Umrah, then he started telling me about all these different places he had been. I was like, dang, I wish my daddy had that money. Right. But it was, you know, it just, what I mean though is just, if you have that amount of comfortability, you don't see the problem as much as somebody who's struggling every day. Somebody's fighting paycheck to paycheck. You have to really feel some empathy. You really have to be connected with them. And that same thing was true when Imam Omar Suleiman came up there, and he brought a brother up there who had a drug problem previously, and he had overcome it. So when the brother came up, he said, I think I told you, it was like maybe 20,000 people there. All these people in this auditorium. He said, how many people here have or had a drug problem or a drinking problem? Nobody raised their hand. He said, that's impossible. Right. He said, it's impossible for all these people here. Nobody had a problem. But it's a stigma, you know, around it. He said, when I came to the masjid, I'm trying to get help, and they were treating me terribly. Right? But it's one thing is they were hiding what their problem is, but the other thing is like an empathy, a sympathy thing with people who are less than you or have less than you, not are less than you. You know what I mean? So you have to get with those people. Like Allah says, you know, it made us in different tribes, so we'll know one another. So if those people who are affluent are not around people who are less affluent, they won't understand their struggle.
So the message for me is when I get money, just don't be like that.
Right. That's exactly how it is. And the other thing is, if you came from the struggle, then you understand it, right? If you came from poverty, I came from eating egg sandwiches all summer, you know, eating toast and all of that stuff. So if I got money, I understand. I know it's somebody else who was in that situation, you know, and I would want to help as many people as I could. Any other questions? All right, Assalamu alaikum.